So you guys had the storyline in 1998. It was born out of a lot of real stuff. He maintains that you treated him very badly backstage, and that you would say things about him in front of him that belittled him, and then you make this storyline out of it. How tough was that for you guys to put that aside and turn it into a storyline?
First of all, I never disrespected. Oh, maybe I did. And I'm not trying to be funny or entertaining. There was one comment that I made, and I didn't intend it to be disrespectful, but it was. It was. The context was about that time when when Nitro first started, everybody was just grateful to have a job. They were getting paid. Their checks were guaranteed. They knew exactly how much money they were making. They weren't on the road 300 days a year. There was a lot of very happy people to be working at WCW at that time, even though we were a distant number two. But once things started becoming very, very successful, talent, being talent, tends to get a little greedy. And, well, why am I not getting more? Why is this guy getting this and I'm not getting that? It's human nature. It happens in business every day. It is what it is. And at the time period you're talking about, during the time period you're talking about, that situation had escalated quite badly and morale was beginning to get to be an issue. So I had a meeting with talent one day, and I regrettably made a statement that sounded something like, all you talent in this room, none of you have ever really drawn money with the exception of these guys over here. And I pointed to Hulk first, and I pointed, I think, to Roddy, maybe, or somebody else, former WWE talent. What I was trying to point out is we were still a long way away from getting to where we needed to be as a company. And the reason we were in the position of getting close to where we needed to be was because of certain talent. And I pointed them out. But what a lot of people heard, and I understand why they heard it this way, was that none of you people matter, only these people matter. Well, Ric Flair was one of those people that were standing there. And that was very offensive to Rick. I didn't single Rick out. I didn't say, see Ric Flair over there? He's never drawn any money. I never said that. But what I did do is lump Rick into that kind of big category of people that have never drawn the kind of money that these people did. And Rick took offense to that. And I understand why, and he should have. It was the wrong thing for me to say. I love Rick. Despite the fact that he probably still hates my guts, I'll always have a lot of affection for Rick and a lot of respect for Rick, because he's achieved things that nobody else in this industry ever has. Have you seen him lately? Hanging out with Mike Tyson, smoking weed. He's having the time of his life. There's rap artists making music about him. He's on ESPN. He's more over now than he was in 1988 at the peak of his career. So how do you not respect Ric Flair, right? But Rick is also a very, very emotional person. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. And he's not the most stable person emotionally you've ever met in your life. And there was an incident that happened. It involved Rick wanting to take time off. Rick didn't follow protocol. He didn't do the things he should have done that he would have had to do in WWE for sure. But he thought because it was WCW, he could just make up his mind not to show up to pursue the things he wanted to do with his family, which, obviously I respect, but there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. And he just decided to no-show a couple events because he forgot to ask for the time off for whatever reason. So he just no-showed. And that turned into an issue. And then the legal department at Turner Broadcasting got a hold of it, and it started to escalate. And then Ric Flair sued Turner Broadcasting, and it made headlines in the Atlanta paper. It became very, very public, and it put me in a position where I was the boss. I have 100 people under 100 wrestlers. I got another 100 staff, but I got 100 wrestlers under contract. All of them are very aware of the fact that Ric Flair decided not to show up when he was supposed to show up, and now he's suing me. I had to make a stand. I had to draw a line in the sand. And in a meeting, probably a couple of weeks later, I called all the talent in the room. I said, here's what's going to happen. I am going to sue Ric Flair for breach of contract because he did breach his contract. He didn't show up when he was supposed to show up. He didn't follow protocol for asking for the time off. And by the way, this was Turner Legal that had made this decision. I just got to be the one to tell everybody. And we're going to sue Ric Flair, and we're going to put him into breach of contract. And if we don't resolve this, we're going to sue him into bankruptcy. Just so you all know, if you decide you want to do what Ric Flair's doing and just decide when you're going to show up or not and still expect your check every 2 weeks because you have a contract, I'm here to warn you, it's not how that works. That's what I did. And Rick took exception to that. Now, as far as how tough was it to work? Not hard at all. Once we resolved it, because Rick and I had been pretty good friends. You know, Rick and his wife at the time, and my wife Lori, and our kids and his kids, we'd all hang out at Disney MGM Studios together and swim and have cocktails all day long, and we had a great time. We went to Japan together. We had a wonderful, we had a good relationship up until that point. But once we resolved that issue, it was like, okay, now that that's over, how are we going to make money with this? And since so many fans knew about the issue, the backstory was so public, we just went, let's just carry it forward.
There's so many questions about kind of 99, 2000 WCW that I could ask. But one that I wanted to ask, thank you very much, is that logo that you, I mean, my God, that logo in 1999 and the Nitro set, it was such a big departure from the other one, from the classic WCW logo. What was the reason behind deciding we need to make a big change? And in hindsight, in case anybody doesn't know, how do you feel about the logo and the set change?
Do you guys remember the logo that he's talking about? Have you ever seen a cat walking away from you with its tail straight up in the air? And you're looking at that cat's ass? That's exactly what that logo looked like. It looked like a cat's ass. It was the ugliest damn thing. And first of all, I don't know why we felt the need to change the logo, because quite frankly, that when I see that WCW Nitro logo, the original one, to this day, it's still strong. It still resonates. There was no reason to change it, other than I think sometimes as a company, you get caught up in the fact that you just need to change something. You know, maybe if we do this, it'll get even better. And there's just like this desire to change for the sake of change. Around that same time, my boss at the time, Harvey Schiller, had pulled me aside and trying to counsel me, trying to be a mentor, because I liked Harvey and I had a lot of respect for him, still do. He was a great guy. Different, but a great guy. And he pulled me aside. Harvey Schiller was a colonel in the Air Force, military guy. He had worked for the U.S. Olympic Committee. He was a very, very well-respected leader. And he pulled me aside and he said, Eric, here's my advice. Do what you want. My advice to you is learn how to delegate. Don't feel like you have to have your fingerprints on everything that happens. Because at the time, that's what I was doing. I only trusted me. I thought I was the smartest guy in the room. Whew. Scary, right? But Harvey convinced me to learn, because he wanted me to become a better executive, is what he was hoping to do. That was his job. So he said, learn how to delegate. So I let a guy by the name of Nick Lambros, who I had hired and brought in as an attorney, who didn't want to be an attorney anymore. He wanted to be an executive on the business side. I put him in charge of marketing, pay-per-view, and it was Nick's idea that we should change the logo. And he worked with a team of people to come up with different ideas. And once they had like 3 or 4 different options available to me, or available to present, they called me into the meeting and said, okay, Eric, here's what we got. What do you think? And the cat's ass logo was actually the best of them all. And I went, that one? I guess. Go with that, because I'm thinking Harvey Schiller wants me to delegate. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was holding on too hard, so I let that happen. But it wasn't because I felt we needed it. It wasn't because I thought that logo was a good logo. It was because I was a little concerned that if I went, this sucks, what are you people thinking, that I would be going against the advice that my boss had given me.
And I feel like the fan reaction to that logo and the set change was pretty negative. Was the reaction positive behind the scenes? Did wrestlers and staff like it? Did they care?
I don't think I remember hearing wrestlers comment one way or the other. I think I was just too caught up in my own shit at that point. There was a lot going on, so I don't remember monitoring the audience or the audience's reaction. We didn't do any research to test it, and by that point, we'd already gone so far with it. We'd scrapped the old logo. We'd introduced the new logo. We introduced the new set. That all comes with a price tag. It wasn't like I was going to go, f it, let's pretend it didn't happen and go back to the old stuff.
So let's go forward. You get sent home in September of '99. You come back to work with Vince Russo. Just seeing what the temperature of the room is for Vince. Are we Vince Russo fans? No. Okay. You and Russo are, it's you two together. You're going to reboot WCW, and I feel that from that era, the thing that's the most controversial and that people still talk negatively about is David Arquette becoming the WCW champion. And we always hear about Tony Schiavone coming up with the idea, Russo saying he thought it was good. We never really hear as much what you thought. What did you think at the time and think now about it?
Keep in mind, I was no longer the president of the company. When I came back, I was hired as an independent. I was a consultant. Okay, I wasn't the booker. I wasn't the head of creative. I was there to oversee creative and give my opinion based on what I saw. If Brad Siegel at the time wanted to hear those thoughts, I worked with Russo to try to help him craft what I thought was better TV, but I wasn't there every day. That wasn't my job. So there were two things. That was one thing that was happening. My role had changed significantly. I was a consultant. I wasn't the boss. The other thing that had happened is that prior to my being sent home in '99, in the early summer of 1999, I got a phone call from Warner Brothers Television, or Warner Brothers Feature Films. A director by the name of Leonardo di Bonaventura, who went on to become a very, very, very successful director at Warner Feature Films, had an idea to do a movie with wrestlers. They contacted me. This is probably in June or July before I got sent home in September, maybe even before that. Might have been the spring. And we sat down and we worked together on a basic outline of a movie script that would involve a lot of WCW wrestlers. Because at that time, that was the time of the merger, the AOL Time Warner merger. So the marching orders that I had back when I was still president is, Time Warner is taking this company over. We have to create synergistic opportunities with our parent company. So basically I was told, if you could find a way to work with Time Warner, make it happen. And now I get a phone call from Leonardo di Bonaventura. He's going, hey, Eric, I got this idea. Would you come out to L.A.? And I'm excited about it anyway. Even if it wasn't the fact that we were being taken over by Time Warner, I was like, fuck, this is kind of a cool idea. Let's do it. So we started working on that movie. Then in September, I got sent home. By the time I came back in February or March, whenever it was, the movie had been developed. They had a script. They're getting ready to go. And David Arquette was a part of that feature. He was a big star in that feature film. So now I'm thinking, okay, how do we maximize our synergy with Time Warner and Warner Feature Films? How do we maximize it? How do we make wrestling more valuable to our parent company? Well, you do that by showcasing how creatively you could use WCW to help support a feature film. It actually makes sense if you think about it outside of the emotional, it was David Arquette is the world champion. I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, there's no way that makes sense. But if you look at it from a purely business perspective, it actually does make a little bit of sense. I'm not justifying it, but at the time it made sense. So when the idea came to me, I went, yeah. I wasn't like, yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, David Arquette, he's the best. Oh, people love it. I was like, we are being taken over by a company called Time Warner, which owns Warner Feature Films, and they want to do a wrestling movie, and David Arquette's a movie star. And at the time, he was a pretty big movie star. And at the time, he was married to the #1 television star on television at the time. I'm thinking, what could go wrong? It did. He chuckled. He goes, yeah.
So when it happens, in terms of your reaction, were you surprised that people were outraged by it? Were you surprised that people sort of thought it the bed? Like, what was your view afterwards?
I don't think it affected me much. I mean, I the bed other times before that. It's not that I was used to it, but I say this now, and I've said this somewhat frequently, that anybody that's never been in a position and made a really, really bad creative idea has never been in the business of creative ideas. You're never going to hit 100%. If you're lucky, 50% of your ideas are going to be winners and 50% are going to be losers. If you're lucky. If you suck at it, the odds are going to be worse. So I'd done things before that I thought were going to be pretty good that weren't. So to me, it was just like, we'll ride it out. In another month or 2 or 3 months, people will forget about it. It won't be that big a deal, and we'll come up with something else, because that's what you have to do when you're producing 52 weeks of television a year. Not every idea. I mean, anybody remember Triple H a corpse? I mean, he screwed a dead body in a casket on national television. How good of an idea was that, right? But you look at all the other great ideas that came afterwards. Not every idea you come up with is going to be a winner. So the answer to your question is, yeah, the audience reacted negatively, but by that stage of my career, it didn't matter that much to me.
So you go through the whole Monday Night Wars, you've been in charge, you've been an employee, you've done all these different things. The last Nitro happens. You were going to buy the company, it falls through. Do you remember where you were when the last Nitro was on? And do you remember, what did you, when you eventually saw Vince do the simulcast, what did you think?
I didn't see it till years afterwards. I didn't watch it live as it happened.
Was that a concerted choice to just avoid it?
Emotionally, I put wrestling in my rearview mirror. It was like, I think I did this thing called professional wrestling a long time ago, but I'd moved on in my mind, and I didn't want to give it any space in my head. So I just wasn't paying attention. I literally walked away from it. Like, I guess you would a relationship. It's not like if you break up with somebody that's important in your life and you're going to hang out with them on weekends. I just, once I walk away from something, I tend to really walk away hard. I don't revisit. I don't think about it. I just walk away, and I had walked away from it. So I didn't see that episode till probably 5 years after it happened.
And when you finally watched it, what did you feel? What did you feel when you watched it?
It probably... It's hard to describe it. I guess it stung a bit because it was still, WCW was Nitro was my baby. I mean, I conceived it in a closet and literally in a room by myself with a yellow legal pad. I didn't want any influence from anybody else. I didn't want to hear anybody else's opinion because Ted Turner put a gun to my head. Ted Turner said, Eric, go do this thing. Go compete with WWE head-to-head on Monday nights. My life at that point, my professional life, was up for grabs. I had a gun to my head. And I didn't want to let anybody influence whether or not I lived or died. So I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. When I walked out of Ted's office that day, this is how we started out the show. When I walked out of Ted's office that day, there's two towers. There were two towers in the CNN Center. There was the North Tower, where a lot of the upper executives were, and there was the South Tower, where a lot of the other executives were, like me. So when I left Ted's office in the North Tower, 15th floor, came down the elevator, walked out of the North Tower, there was a bridge that spanned the atrium. You could look down, and there was a shopping area there, and a gift store, and restaurants, and bars. And I remember walking out of that meeting, and I stood on that atrium, and I looked out over the CNN Center. You could look at the CNN Center, and it was like 15 stories high, and it was all glass on the inside, and you could see everybody working. It's the CNN Center. It's kind of a big deal at the time. And I'm standing there looking at this, and I'm thinking, okay, this is my shot, or this is the end of my career. I've got to make this work. And I thought through that, and I went back to my office. I didn't tell anybody about the meeting. I had no conversations with anybody. I locked my door, and I sat down with a yellow legal pad and a pencil. And I made a list of all the things that the WWF was really good at on one side of the legal pad. And I drew a line down the middle, and I said, okay, how do I be different than that? How do I do what they're so good at, but do it differently? Because I can't beat them at what they do. There's no way I'm going to be better than them at what they're already doing, but I can be different than them. And by being different, I can hopefully be better. And that's exactly what happened. But I sat in that room by myself, and I made a list of probably 10 or 15 things. Let's see, their tape. I'm right-handed. Their tape. I'm live. They're going after their presentation was teens and preteens, because that was their business model. They were selling hot dog or ice cream cones, or WWE cookies, WWE this and that, toys. It was all of their. That's why their characters were all over the top, like human cartoons. They had Garbage Man, they had Crazy Dennis, they had IRS guys, they had little midgets, they had all these crazy cartoons, right? Little people. Is there anybody? Oh, no, I couldn't see if there was. Never mind. Horrible. That was horrible. But I went, they're designing their show to go after teens and preteens. I'm going to go after 18 to 49-year-old men, because nobody's paying attention to them. I'll go get them. They can have the kiddies. I'm going to go after this audience. And I literally made that list, and that became the template for Nitro.